Welcome, mums and dads, to the fifth installment of our SA Marriage Week webinars. Hoping that you've had a very good weekend and you are well rested and ready for the rest of the week, and spring has sprung. I'm not flying solo. I have my two guests, one of whom is already with us, and the other one is still trying to connect. Now, the joy of being live and the joy of technology is that things tend to happen that are very much unpredictable, which is more like life. You never know what life will throw at you unexpectedly. So you kind of have to go with the blows. So today's topic, we're talking about finding that sweet spot, maintaining or getting that harmony in your marriage. And we also want to give you tools that when you get to that spot where you've kind of been cruising and you find yourself just being on cruise mode, disengaged, how do you get back? How do you find that harmony? How do you get back to that sweet spot where you are not losing each other? And when you are there, how do you then reconnect with your spouse or your partner, so that your marriage becomes one where it is this place where you both enjoy, and it's that relationship that always exudes warmth. So as I said, I'm not flying solo. I shall introduce one of my guests, Daddy Ronald Muringai. Welcome back, Daddy.
Thank you very much, and a good morning to all the moms and dads listening out there. It's a privilege and an honor really to be on your show here today.
Thank you, Daddy. And for now, we will give a virtual standing ovation as we bring on Umami Tolintla. Mami, welcome to the conversation.
Sanbana, thank you for having me here. I hope it's going to be a useful one for me as well and everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mami. So we'll just get right into the conversation, right? When you've been married for a long time and your relationship or your marital relationship has had other influences, as we've discussed in the past couple of days, and your marital relationship has gone through certain phases, and you've become comfortable with each other, right? You then find yourself just basically cruising, and you're just there. You're thinking everything is okay, but you are unaware that there's now disharmony. You're snapping at each other. The way you talk to each other has changed. It's no longer lovey this, lovey that. You're now calling each other on a first name basis. Or if children have come into the picture, you are now Baba Gabanbani or Mama Gabanbani. And that's often met with some coldness. I'll start with you, Mami. How do you think, or how would you advise couples who are in that stage to kind of get into that reconnection phase?
I think it's important is to always tap back to why you got married at the first place. It is very important to not lose that part and to not get comfortable, because I hear you saying what you get to a point of being comfortable, and I think that is where we go wrong. Definitely you need to be conscious about the fact that you are with somebody whom you met at their adulthood, and so you're going to be learning new things about them at all times. And so therefore you need to work on it on a daily to make things still happy and still sweet, as you mentioned it. So it's the whole point of calling yourself out when you can see ukuthi izinto seziyashintsha manje. Once you start calling him by his first name, ask yourself what has just happened. Once he starts calling you that, ask yourself, okay, what have we done? And sit back and go back to the drawing board to say, what is happening? Because you shouldn't be uncomfortable in confronting issues that are facing you as and when they come.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mamitoli. Did it run out?
I don't know how.
Sorry?
I don't know if I should still continue.
If you still have more to say, please do. Oh, you are mute. You are on mute. There we go. Oh, you're mute again. There we go. How? You kind of go on and off. Yebo, there we go. Let's hear you now. Okay, we've just lost you a bit.
Okay.
Sorry? Yeah, so we need a man.
Okay, but I suppose the main thing that I'm on mute.
No, we can hear you. Okay, let's for now go to Daddy Ronald. Daddy, how do we move away from calling each other by first name in Babagaban?
Say
yeah. Just what I said about a live, it does that to you. Sure, Daddy.
Yes. Nothing to stress about, man. I think it's one of those things, Jay, that we can't predict how the network works on a particular day. So you might have everything in line and everything, prepared and ready, and then somehow someone sitting in the network system there just presses the wrong button, and we find ourselves in a place like this. But hey, like you're saying, it's part of the package. I think, look, marriage from the word go, I think from what we were talking about last week, and from the sessions that you've had as well, is quite of a challenge. I think it's an interesting challenge. It's one that grows both parties within that marriage context. And if it therefore says, if you're not ready or willing to accept the challenges as they come and to deal especially with whatever is thrown your way during the course of your marriage, then you might find yourself really veering away from that sweet lane, as it were. And to come back, obviously, you'd have to do something. You'd have to practically engage in certain ways and means to ensure that you actually come back and get back at it. So for the benefit of the both of you, I think we all know that when things are not so nice, when things are not in that sweet zone, we don't look forward to getting home. You don't look forward to having those conversations. If you hear that we need to talk, then you start thinking, oh, what is this now? What does she want now? So but if we're in that sweet spot, we know that, of course, we need to talk is probably something that's really just technical. It's nothing to do with the relationship itself. So one thing that has helped me, I think I mentioned it in the previous session that we had, is that I think I married a bit late. I was 36 when I got married. So I had kind of eaten a number of Christmases, literally, and I think that the maturity level was a bit on the higher side. But that doesn't mean things get perfect because of that as well, because that also means someone is set in their ways so much more than the one who gets married earlier and gets the chance to gel with their person over time. So I think that's the one. But the second thing is the advice that we got as well before we got married. I think from the Christian background that we come from, we had to do a course on premarital counseling, which I think was about 6 months, if I remember, every second Saturday or something like that. And the one important thing that we picked up from there that would really help in this particular topic of yours today is the lesson that I got taught, that marriage, as with a relationship, is something that we have to constantly be learning over time. We spoke about changes in the previous session and the fact that no one is going to remain stable and static where they are in life as an individual, their body, their age, their hair, coming, going, etc. So we also then have to intentionally know that change is coming, and then how do we then prepare for it? So even if that change means the relationship is not as sweet as it was, there has to be then ways and means to say, how do we then come back to that place of sweetness again? And I think for me, the one important thing that we've kind of practiced in our marriage is to maintain a simple thing as a date night. Now, you mentioned earlier that, of course, when the kids come along and the names begin to change and the roles, even, when we're running into the house, no longer to hug each other, but to make sure that the child is eaten, the child is bath, the child, and it's no longer one child, it's two children, it's no longer two children, it's three children, and all of that stress, and the school runs and then the food. By the time we have time for each other, when the kids have gone to sleep, we literally tired ourselves. There's almost no appetite, as it were, to even engage in any serious and meaningful conversation. So it becomes important then to put aside time intentionally. And one thing that we kind of started out when we got married is to maintain at least one night a week, a date night of sorts. Even if we have to find somebody to take care of the kids, even if we have to find somebody to guard the house as we go out, we must make sure that we don't lose on that, because during that time, then we have the real conversation. How are you really doing? What is it that we can do in this marriage to make things better? Where do you think we're failing? And have those practical discussions, that really can help bring back that sweet spot, as it were. So I would say the one thing really that's important is to set aside that time. It's absolutely, you cannot not do without it, because I think one of the stats that I've seen, sadly, is that people, when the kids get out of the house and people are now in their late 50s and early 60s, there's such a high divorce rate there, because men, husband and wife, no longer really know each other. They've been together all this time because, stuff is going on. The kids are there. Somebody has to be dropped off. This has to be paid. And life has become so mechanical. Things are moving in a direction that none of us are really in control of. But we then, in that process, unfortunately, lose ourselves. We then lose that spark, that look in the eye of, God was sweetie one. We would lose the whole buying of flowers and chocolates and making it all romantic, as if it was something that was just for the teenage years and not for the marriage years. And once that is lost, it then says we are almost like a train just moving with the railway. And when we are finally then left just the two of us in the house, it really becomes tough. I think one of the things we've noticed, as well as you've read in the news lately, is that the lockdowns was actually not so kind to a lot of marriages, because that's exactly what people were forced to do. Sit down, get to know each other, and find out, who is this person? And this is the person that you married, this is the person that you're in love with. And now you're finding out, we're no longer in the same wavelength, we're no longer in the same direction, only because now you've been forced to really be together. So much as that, I think, has been a lesson to say, take time, guys, sit down, get away from everything. Even if it's taking a weekend, 2 weekends a year, 3 weekends a year, just the two of you, leave the kids, and just connect the two of you. It's absolutely important, because ultimately we don't want our lives to become about them. One thing I've got advice is that they come and they complement what we are doing. They don't come and dictate what we end up doing. So if we are not careful, we can then get lost into that whole taking care of the children vibe and forget that trying to charm you and. So I think that for me, that's what's important. Maintain that intimacy between the two of you, even if it means pushing the kids away at some point in time.
Boom. Mami, Uzwele. Maybe let's do this. Before network iba anti-revolutionary. You wanted to finish your train of thought. So maybe you can finish your train of thought, and let's hear what you also have to say on top of what Ubabu Muringai has said.
So I've connected my phone now. Let's hope it's gonna work. So
it's much better.
So I was saying, umshado, marriage is is a thing that I feel it's two people that are in love and they get together and just decide to we're gonna go for this forever. But at some point, I find sometimes, and I shouldn't say sometimes, in most cases, you find people start at not in aligned with what they want to do. So the one still wants to be, so the one wants a wife, but is not yet ready to be a husband.
Ooh.
And so that discussion doesn't really get discussed. What does it mean for you to be a husband, and what it means for you to be a wife? And I've found that in most cases, AMA lines or definition of what a wife is are very clear, and they communicated many times and throughout a lot of platforms. But there's a few platforms or few conversations about what it means to be a husband, and when does that start? So for most, especially African, I will speak from that African perspective, is for most of the men, they very much ready to have a wife, but they're definitely not ready to be husbands. And that's where we start finding these issues of then finding the sweet spot is leaving our marriage. Because I'm saying, I have now converted myself from being this young, groovy lady that you found me as, and now I've now gained roles of being a mother, roles of being a wife, roles of being a makoti, and so on and so forth, and over and above that, I'm a house. I'm guarding the house now because you're never here, and so you find a lot of guys, and I'm going to say there's a lot of guys at the age up to about 45, 49, when I think they're still young to come back, ngama 2 a.m.s, ngama 5 a.m.s, ngama weekends, they're sitting with them guys, having some drinks, and for them it's like, what's an issue? And really, it's not acceptable, because as women, then what must happen? If we say, Uguti, then Nami, I should have my own life, that means the kids that we've brought into this family will be left alone, literally, not just like the daddy was saying, Uguti, take them to Ukoko once in a while. But it just means, Uguti, there's one person who is sacrificed and compromised for the marriage, and the one is getting all the benefits. So I think that needs to really be looked into, and the focus should really be on mentoring men to be husbands and mentoring men to be honest, to have honest conversations. For me, I find if a guy can honestly say, Thando Sam, I really want, and I think this institution of marriage might work for us, but I have no clue what I'm required to do. Can we discuss this? I think I would appreciate that more than a guy just sitting and laughing about it, to say, no, man, I'm getting corner, I provide, I need to, it doesn't fly with me. It doesn't help. So we need more mentors for men. We also need to change the socialization of that will help us adjust. When do you then move from being a boy to being a man? Because that is also lacking. If you're gonna get married, you find a lot, as ladies, before we get into the institution of marriage, there'll be women, church ladies, Mama Base, the neighborhood that will come and baglulege and give you advice all the time. At no point do you see this guy that I'm gonna get married to being set down by other men or by the community, telling him what needs to give, what needs to happen. So again, these speeches that happen at the wedding, on the wedding day, need to change. The narrative needs to change, because they sort of give the men a get out of jail card, because you will have this woman, which is supposedly a mother of the church or a leader or whatever, or even your own mom, saying to him, no, you shouldn't worry if he doesn't come back. Saying you don't ask a man where he has been. If a man is cheating, you'd focus on making him happy. If a man wants this, give it to him. Make sure his food is ready. So on the wedding day, he's getting a get out of jail free card, and you are getting into jail. And that's when we start our marriages in that wrong manner. So we need to change the narrative and the foundation of our marriages, because the foundation of our marriage is what has got us at where we are now. Already on that day, the sweetness has been taken away, and they actually literally say,
emshadweni akusiushukela, emshadweni it's sour or it's hard, you know, you have to ubegezele, it's difficult. We need to change all those narratives and start saying on the wedding day how beautiful it is, how lovely it is, how wonderful it is to be a collective in this merit in this institution.
Wow, powerful insights. But I want to touch on Izinto Zikhulumile, and now it's like us going back. But I believe we need to go back in order for us to go forward. So I also have not seen it as much as it happens for abantu besifazane. Ukuthi umuntu wesilisa uyelulekwa, you know, that group of men, especially elderly men who have been married, who know marriage, coming in and saying, Lalela ndoda, this is what is expected of you now. This is what you now need to do going forward. This is how you take care of your family. And most of all, I think the best advice would be, make sure to build your own marriage. Yes, you've seen other people there, you've seen what this is done there, but make sure that you build your own marriage in a way that you would like it. And also, just to kind of buttress that point, we as men again, and we kind of are not raised with that mentality of being a husband. We are raised to be boys. Boys will be boys. Men don't cry. Men don't do this. Yes, kumele uthathe unkosikazi and get married one day. Ubhadala amalobolo. But there is never, I don't remember any guy or any male who will say ukuthi throughout their lives they've been preparing themselves to be a husband. And I think masadlala sebancane uMandlwana, whenever we would play the husband-wife role, there was one thing we were all looking forward to, and we know what that is. And we continue with that mindset even to say, this is what I expect in my marriage. And I'd like you, again, both of you, to also talk to the idea that, so as dads in the picture, we're saying we advocate for a dad to be in the picture, and co-parenting, that no parent is lesser or greater than the other. And children are important, but how important are children in intimacy? How do you make sure that in order for your partner, for you and your partner to be totally intimate with each other, where do you find that place where you take the children? Let's say your parents or your support structure is not there. How do you kind of find that balance?
Terry, do you want to start?
No, it's fine. You can go ahead. Ladies first.
So, so I get that when the children are still young, obviously you need the support. That's definitely, you need a support where you can take your kids so that you can also relax and stuff like that. But I always advocate, and I have 2 sons, and since they were young, I've always advocated for making sure that the kids do experience what intimacy is in the marriage, because we were robbed of that from our own upbringing. So the kids need to see mom and dad kissing, need to know that mom and dad are going to the room and they need their private time. And so the kids can sit and watch TV at that time, or have whatever activities that they can do, because mom and dad, they're having their own time. They need to know when to knock at the door. You don't just walk into the parents' rooms, you would knock before you come in. When loud music play, you guys stand up and you dance in front of your children. They experience that, they see it. So that, and I always say, so you are grooming them to know what love is, what love feels like, what love looks like, and they enjoy it. I remember at the age of about 4 or 5, my son, we had visitors, and my son actually asked this couple that came to say, but, you know, when last did you take your woman? Oh, this woman was complimenting my ring, and a beautiful ring. So he turned around to that guy and said, well, you need to buy her a ring and take her on a date. And what a date means, you must buy her a dress, you must flowers, this. So that's, we need to teach them to know. I'm getting feedback. Are you guys still hearing me well?
Sorry, no, continue.
Okay, so it's very important that we don't hide that away from them. I advocate a lot for taking them to granny and to support structure for a break, but I do not advocate for taking them away for them not to see and to experience. So that is my part.
Daddy Ronald?
Right, I think that's a very important thing she talks about there, because I think from our meeting and engagements, Vele, you know that I've been very much an advocate of fathers being present, you know, as it says in the picture, as their children are growing up, because for most of the issues that Mama is raising, unfortunately, they have to be, what can I say, taught from way back then. There's no course, 2-day course, 3-day sit down that will make this man who has grown up all his life not seeing what her boys are seeing, for example, to get that kanjalo. You know, yes, we can try, we can have a curriculum over it, we can talk about it, but is he going to actually get all of that? Because we know, especially when it comes to the wedding, you know, when everybody's speaking there at the wedding, there's probably 7 or 8 speeches, probably everybody's saying the same thing. But by the time the 7th person comes, you know, you're sitting there at the high table in your gown and your black suit, you are unbothered by all these endless speeches. It's a drone, it's a monotony of the same stuff. But if you haven't really practically seen that, like she's saying, she's teaching her boys to, if you haven't known how to actually love a woman by seeing your dad love your mom, it becomes then difficult to jump and to adjust into those rails very quickly.
Yeah.
So that says, yes, we've got the generational issue where we can talk about finding that sweet spot for the next 20 years of our children, you know, and then how can they then avoid the trap of what we went through and what some of our marriages are going through at the moment. That's fine. But for now, for manje, for the people that are finding themselves, you know, growing up in these marriages and finding that trouble and with that husband that has never seen all that your boys have seen. Your boys are definitely what I advocate for. That's what I speak when I stand on stages and speak. I want and I advocate for parents and fathers to be there in their lives so they can show, you know, how it is to love a woman, how it is to take care of a woman, how it is, you know, I never saw my parents kiss, like she just mentioned. Now, I never saw my parents even hold it. They were just so stoic and so formal and, you know, I never saw the intimacy. So how do I, I'll probably take that same, template that I saw, because that's the only way I know of being a dad. That's the only way I know of being a husband. And so if Nkosikazi manje wants to now touch me and hug me in front of the kids and parents, I'll be almost like in a shock. When's a nigga manje, you know, because can't you see there are people here? This is supposed to be a cameron, whereas it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be intimacy that we're teaching into our kids. So I think, it's really a two-pronged situation where, of course, for the next generation, we have to teach our kids. I'm absolutely for that. But for the people that have already grown, how do we help them now to find that sweet spot? I think that's where the conversation must probably gravitate to.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I'd like us also to touch on, Daddy, and Mami, is this topic that it almost becomes an elephant in the room, especially when we're talking about the sweet spot and intimacy, the topic of sex in marriage. How do we find that balance? Because initially, when you start out, I don't believe it's an issue for anyone. But as you go along, certain responsibilities pull you away. certain things happen, you're thinking about something else. And then before you know it, 3 weeks has gone by. You haven't even touched each other. You don't know where your Jerusalem is anymore, whether it's grown trees or the feld is still plain. How do you keep that going as well? Daddy? Oh, mommy, you can take it if you want to.
No, he's gonna start, but I just want to address what he just said, Uguti. So how do we deal with them now? So there's platforms. We need to create platforms like that. So I'm a psychologist and I specialize in marital issues, and I always find myself in a corner where I need to be saying, to the woman, let's understand where he's coming from. Let's go back. Let's try and teach him. But the guy needs to also be teachable. The guy needs to also unlearn what he didn't, or learn new things that he never got a chance to learn. So I'm saying, Guti, for it to change, we can't say, we're already broken. So we need to say, we acknowledge that we never got that, and there are platforms. And so the men, and that's what I was saying, men need to be ready to change. They can't, and I find that they always hide behind the fact that we never knew, we never saw, we don't know where to. Now we are saying, let us start, and we need to start now. And we need to make this platform and many more platforms to say, where to from here. So a Real Men Conference, that's what we're not going to do. And when I spoke about mentors, we need to have those kind of situations where we say we're starting to change now. We're not going to say we're already broken, because then again, that means our kids will be already broken again and again. When we then maybe talk about intimacy and sex and marriage, we need to, I find that communication is key for everything. If you communicate with the Sandosam, you can see Ukuti are now there's many other things and other responsibilities and other stresses that are added into the marriage. So things are not going to be the same as before. The communication needs to be there, but the imbalance is also there because if we still go back to what I was saying, if I'm playing all the house roles and the parenting roles and everything else, and it's not shared, then it's not going to balance, because I'm going to say, Mina, I'm tired. Then it's going to be a thing of, oh, yes, women always say they're tired and they have a headache. But once you start sharing the responsibilities and sharing the house chores and sharing everything, then you will understand. You'll probably be at the same spot. If you're both tired, we're both tired, and you'll understand where that comes from. And if you then know that, you will then create time and space to say, look, today we're not touching anything, we're getting takeaways, because we are deliberately and consciously going into whatever we want to plan. So the issue of imbalance makes problems when it comes to sex, because the guy will only then just say, now go to an 8 to 5 and come back, expect food to be ready. You still must cook for him. You must still serve him, and then still sit to the kids, but the kids, and only still sit to him. So once that also changes, and I know that is also going to go back to socialization, which says, go to the agenda roles, which is what is killing our marriages now, because the gender roles mean, men are going to work 24/7, which includes working now with food in that package. Whereas if we change that and we say, yes, they worked for a reason because mama never went out to work. Now we're doing 8 to 5, 8 to 7, even as women. So Ubaba, if he comes back early, he needs to start with the pots and start with other things so that we can make space for the intimacy at the end of the day. So that's my part.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Did it, Ronald?
Uyishilo indaba umama, indaba ye-headache every day. Hayi ngiphethwe ikhanda. Hey, headache yokwenzani? The headache must fall. I'm just kidding. Look, I think she's raising some very important points over there, and that whole socialization really thing has really boxed us to win. And these are your roles, and obviously contributes, I think, to that fatigue factor, because really, I know even sometimes my wife comes from work and then now, and by the time we even try to initiate stuff, I end up, Katala, etc. So it's really real stuff that she's talking about over there. And I think for me, like I said from the very word go, that we have to then become intentional about this thing. Because if we don't set aside time, if we don't work towards ensuring that this spontaneity and that passion is there on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly. We have to have, you can't go, like you said earlier, 3 weeks, njani, how, unless, of course, if you guys in Sebenza a mine every day and digging the rocks and your time. Outside of that, really, you should intentionally set aside time. That's why I said, if you're going to at least find one day in a week where everything else shuts down and you guys just continue to look into each other's eyes and to speak those real truths and to cultivate. Unfortunately, it's like that. It's different from when we were kids and then we didn't have responsibilities and we didn't have jobs and because we've got all the passion and all the blood is boiling and stuff. But now that we're older and there's so many things happening in our lives, we literally have to now try and find that space and force it into our schedules. Otherwise, you'll really go for those months and 2 months without anything happening. Because why? You just gotten into that whole zone of work and tasks and orientation and this and that and that and that and the other, and forget that actually before all of these things happened, it was me and you. It was the two of us. Let's try and keep that passion alive. Let's try and keep that fire alive. And for me, for that to happen, like I said, set aside time and force that time. Otherwise, really, you can really just get lost in the things of life.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is if you force the time, you won't have to force the intimacy later on. So I think that's a very key takeaway. And the most important thing, I think, is just being intentional. I was also amazed this weekend. My wife and I had a weekend to ourselves where our son went on to a sleepover, and we connected. That's where you get to realize how important time as a couple is, because as you alluded to earlier, Dede Ronald, that lockdown, especially level 5, where most sectors were just on a standstill and everybody was at home. You are not the person I said I do to so many years ago. Like, you are this person. I once read I think it was an article where they were talking about the divorce rate in China, that couples got divorced after retirement. And that's because throughout their working lives, the husband is always away, leaving early, coming back late. That's basically the routine. Weekends, there's very little time that's spent with each other. Now comes retirement. He's retiring. He now is staying at home. Here he is at home. Boom. Okay, who are you? He doesn't know this person. He's committed basically maybe 40 years odd in just work, and this person is missed out. And I think as well, work tends to have a bigger role in depriving couples of intimacy. What are your thoughts, Mami?
And depriving couples just time to love each other, not even intimacy. I find we speak a lot about achievements in terms of monetary value. In most cases, we talk about that's what's in now, about having your second and third pay, always get that extra job, extra income, and all of that. I'm all for that, but at the end of the day, at what expense? Sometimes we're so much into material issues and material things about, getting your mansion and your cars and everything. And in actual fact, you then end up being strangers, because if I'm going to have 2 to 3 jobs, when I'm at my home, when do I have time for myself? Because there is no way I'm going to love you before I love myself. And I find that in most cases, we have lost love for self. And so we try and then force love for the other. And it's impossible to love a man when you don't love yourself, because how then does he also know? Because he needs to see how to love you through you loving yourself. He needs to see he needs to see your worth through you valuing yourself. So I cannot expect my husband to see my worth and my value if I don't show him that I value myself in that manner and I love myself in that manner. And so if I'm showing that I'm loving money and material things more, then that's what he's going to provide. And so therefore the issue of marriage, the issue of family, the issue of being there with the kids and all of that then is just besides the point. You don't even get time to enjoy that money that you work so hard for. So I say there needs to be a line, there needs to be communication and draw, and also the competition needs to go, because we find ourselves competing a lot with couple number A and couple number B, because they now have this and they're now driving that, and we forget ukuthi thina we also didn't even start at the same spot. Abanye bethu, they already had investments put up for them and whatnot, and some of us started very much behind. So you can't then pace yourself with those people. So you need to pace yourself with who you are and what you want, and it definitely needs to be about quality of life and quality of just enjoying, than all about money. So I think we can always blame it to Bas John with his 8 to 5, but we also add with these now. We're selling products, we going to the presentations. It's a lot, and I think we just need to breathe at some point. We need to performule and say, Guti, because I've brought Lomdana Abantu in this house and said she's my wife, I need to also have time for her. She really doesn't, buy me a rose, that's why buy me a rose. Don't even, when you're trying to get me a car, by that time, the guy at work has bought me a rose and I'm gone.
Ish. Yo, the comparison of those two, when are you buying me a car? Yeah, now he bought me a rose and I'm gone. When are you thinking, really? A car, a rose? Like how does that happen?
He gets to say, oh, nice, sexy, you look beautiful today. You are not there, you're working for the car, unfortunately.
Ooh. Ish, we are not mind, yes. Daddy?
Yes. No. That's actually very valid, hey. And I think, yes, we can point to the work situation, blame the work situation, but ultimately, I think like someone posted there, we really must communicate what are our expectations, how are things going. Let's take stock. Let's have every company has a time, where employers and employees sit down and take evaluation and say, according to the KPIs that you were supposed to achieve in this particular financial year, you have achieved, and as such, we'll give you a bonus, or we're not giving you a bonus, or we're giving you a raise, whatever it is that they incentivize to ensure that you actually stay on your toes in trying to optimize your performance. Why don't we do the same thing? Why don't we sit down, whether it's on a weekly basis, whether it's on a monthly basis, within our marriage setting, and say, how are we doing? How are we winning? Are you happy? Are you getting? So if that communication to the real issues, if that floodgate is open, and sometimes the pouring can take place that you'll be thinking, is it really me? Because half the time, when divorces have happened, you'll find the guy or the lady will probably think, hey, I thought everything was fine. And that's because there wasn't that open communication that was taking place. Somebody was just now really just making up the numbers and making up the gap in that marriage and closing and pressure line, so much that you get lost in everything that was just mentioned. They busy, you're selling clothes, you're selling blankets, you're selling this, but at the same time you're working and you're trying to take care of the kids and you're trying to and all of that just becomes so much. It takes away the joy of just being together, just knowing each other, just spending time with each other, watching a movie with no stress, going to sit in the park, take a walk for a kilometer or two and just talk, even if it's just silence, but just that intimacy. And like I said earlier, which I think really will just really help us, if we intentionally cultivate that time, then we communicate, then we open up to each other, then we speak of the issues. Then if there's the stuff that's bothering us, or somebody else that's actually trying to get us with the rose as I'm busy working for the car, we really get to talk about it. Because when we set out on this marriage trip, we wanted to love each other. We swore in front of God and men that we are going to, until one of us dies anyway, do our best to ensure that this marriage is going to work. So where does it fall apart along the way? Where do we then say and come and say, because no, we have to take that responsibility. We have to make sure that, yes, as a husband, yes, as a wife, I'm giving my best. And if not, then at least my husband will let me know where I'm failing, because Nikshate size 8, manje so size 38. can we talk about that? Is it something that's really important for me, in terms of intimacy issues as well? So all of those things, unfortunately, if they're not said, if they're not talked about, if we don't have the time to just sit and connect and chat about it, you'll never know when the marriage actually really ends. Because by the time Cecilia with divorce court, probably 6 years ago, we're just moving with inertia now. So intentionally have the conversations, intentionally confront the deep issues as they are. And if there really is that something that's really irking you about your partner, confront it. Otherwise, it really just builds and builds and builds, and that you just drift away over time.
Wow.
I just want to say before I forget this, so you're saying was by the time you go to divorce court, umshado kudala uphelile. I want to add ukuthi by the time you get in front of umfundisi and say I do, umshado has already finished before you say yes. That is what we confronted with as a Black communities. And before I became a psychologist, I was a wedding planner. And I tell you, most cases, before those people stand in front of umfundisi, umkhwenyana is already saying, hey, ayiphele le nto yakho. Already that is just an event. Yes, is it because she wants an event for people to see that you got married, but the marriage it never started. So now we're busy talking about fixing the marriage, but the marriage is not there. So we need to know when to actually get into the marriage to begin with. What is umshado? I think as we're talking, it just makes me realize that we need to reverse way back to say umshado uyini. What is the importance of umshado? Because now we're busy saying with the intimacy, this, that. You cannot have all of those when you married someone ongamfuni waseqaleni. When you married someone, when your intention wasn't to be married, when it was just to have this fluffy, beautiful, with a man that's already abusive, with a man that's already not loving you, with a man that you're already not intimate with a man, or vice versa, with a woman that's, not, there for you. And you're just getting married because socialization says at an age of 35, ugogo, umama nobaba ekhaya sebegugile, so we need someone ozovusa umuzi and somebody to have kids. So then you get married for them, not for you. The question is, why are we getting married at the first place? Is the marriage, I sometimes always feel like there needs to be a stop and say, let us educate each other to say, umshado uyini, why do we even get married before we even start fixing things? Because socialization says, so they take a wife. And me, it says, mina vele as ngingizalwa. Every time we are called so as you cooler, your thing is to be a wife. So you're getting married so your parents can be proud to say you are there. But the actual reason the two of these people and ask them, why are you together? It's not about building and busy trying to be whatever we're trying to fix now. So for those that are lucky that they got married for the right reasons, these are the right topics. And for those that are not yet married, please can you just pause and ask yourselves very valid questions. Why are we getting married? Are we ready to get married? And what is marriage? And then we take it from there.
Wow. Those wisdom nuggets. And what I also want to touch on, which you kind of and I want us to also kind of balance the conversation. So we've been talking about how men are not coming to the fore, coming to the picture, raising the bar. If you look at it, a girl child, utengelwa onodoli, and then they get the playhouse, they do all of those things. Amateurs they are gender aligned. Yeah, now she always has to clean the house, cook, do the laundry, all those domestic chores. And then she is expected to get married. She is expected to have children at a particular age, and her friends around her then get married. And now she feels she's under pressure to get married. And in that desperation of wanting to also fall into that class of married women, she goes and she finds a boyfriend instead of a husband. And she wants to turn him into a husband. But he's not really ready to be a husband. he hasn't matured to that level. What role do women play in that groom getting to emshadweni athi ayiphele lento yakho? Because we'll have to admit that it's not, he may not have even wanted this. Daddy Ronald.
Hey, kunzima la ngaphandle. So look, it then really must go way back, because if we would say you're now really getting dragged to the altar for the enjoyment or pleasure of somebody else, and you yourself as a man are failing to then voice out your concerns prior to that even event, it already says, I think, like Mam Tolihlanhla said earlier, sets the stage for almost a troublesome, if not a failed marriage, because you, in essence, are also just failing to become yourself. You're failing to appreciate what you want in life. And if you are just going to go all the way for the sake of abazali, for the sake of ukuvusumuzi, for the sake of, maybe you're pregnant or whatever, then there's a problem with you. We should also ask you, so I think before you even sign, before you even understand what marriage, who are you? That you are literally dragged like a cow to the altar. That's just embarrassing, if I should say. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. Yet it is the reality for a lot of men. Shame, we cannot even discount it. It's the way that it is, because my expectations of societal expectations really just weigh down heavily on us. By the time I was 35, hey, family event, there's an advert that even came out. I would laugh because I knew exactly what they were talking about. I was that guy, every second corner. So at some point in time, that pressure can indeed make you fold and abide by what people want you to do. And that's what I'm saying, Guti. When then do you become yourself? How then do you allow the external to dictate what happens to you in the internal? Have you decided? Do you even know who you are as a Kalen? So you are now literally going to become somebody else's problem. You are now taking this young girl, old girl, mid-age girl, whoever she is, and giving more problems in her life when you don't even know yourself. And I'm just talking directly to men here, because I don't have a leg to stand on and try to talk to women. So as a man, for you to then be able to get into a marital setting where you're saying in front of God and men, I will love you to death part, but your heart and mind are not there, you really have done society a disservice, a massive disservice. You're actually setting up, even for your kids, for them, they won't be able to see that intimacy, because you're probably the guy who's going to look for that intimacy elsewhere. You're probably the guy who also tolagala outside of varsity, because you cannot get to love and cherish the wife that God has given you, the wife that you have actually drag you to the altar and marry her. So we have to then say, can you step up and be a man? Can you do the things that you actually want to do? Can you be the person that you're supposed to be and not become an extra burden on someone else for the sake of other people?
So also stepping up and being a man also means, Uguti, just get out of that relationship rather than just going forward.
Do the right thing. Yeah. Do the right thing. Musa ukushada ngoba naku somebody is pregnant. Musa ukushada because ngoba naku ufuna ukuvusumuzi. Don't do it for other people. Ufunani wena as a person. Interrogate yourself. Find, like I'm saying, I mean, let's talk about the marriage. What is marriage? Before Caesar's speak nje ukuvula la. Ufunani wena.
Yeah.
What do you want? Because if you now end up getting firstly into an institution that you don't even understand and know what it's about, yet when I was asked what is it that you even want in the first place, we have literally now an atomic bomb that's just waiting to explode later down in the years of that marriage.
Just throwing stones and sticks into everything. It's similar to abazalwana bashada so that they can have sex officially without the guilt and the sin.
There we go.
Yeah. I think also in the men's defense, for a change.
Yes.
in the men's defense is socialization also helps them to make that decision. Because if I was a man and I have this woman who's prepared to give me money for her own lobola, who is prepared to pay for the whole shebang of the party that she wants to please her friends, who's going to be then the wife that I'm going to go home to when I want to, because socialization says indoda ibuya mayibuya ekhaya. Mangabuzi uyareport abazothi uyabuya kodwa ekhaya kuthi no, yes, it comes back, then you don't complain. So you have a wife that's going to make sure that your clothes are ironed, your food is healthy, you have this kaftines right to emsebenzini, you have this position of being a Mr. and a married man. You have your dignity is intact because we have lo mama law. When there's issues at home, if you have this wife that's going to go make sure with every event at your homestead is going to be spick and span, because that's what socialization has brought apart. Umakoto on Monday or even a week before to do all of the things that needs to be done. As a man, I'm like, why not? I'm gonna get married because I am allowed. Socialization is saying what in daughter can see on the side. So I'm gonna be allowed to have a side chick. I'm gonna be allowed to come back when I want to. I'm gonna still drink my alcohol. So why not? So I think that it goes back to what I was saying then, with socialization, too. Because again, what he's doing is what he's seen, ekaya, even though our mothers never paid for their lobolas and whatnot, but he's seen Baba not coming back home and Baba having their own life with no problems. So when you can have your headache of the wedding, it's fine. Me, I'm still gonna have my life and enjoy it. And I always say, and sometimes women don't get it when I say men are very honest beings, and they being, but that's why they are liars when they tell the truth. But my daughter will tell you, hey, mina ngeke uzongihlalisa ekhaya. They tell you, mina hey, angeke ngibe nomfazi oyedwa, I need to have. Hey, minimally I'm getting etafuleni. He will tell you, whether he tells you in a jokingly way or but he will tell you everything that is not going to do. And as a woman, you will accept it because you want to achieve what you want to achieve. So I want to say, as women, we need to then start listening and really listening to the facts that are given to us by the men. We need to start watching because the signs are there. It doesn't all of a sudden become something else. A man will be what he wants to be, and the signs are there, but we probably don't see them because we're still fooled by this intention of wanting to be married. Let's watch, let's ask, and let's listen properly to what he's saying. And when he says this, interrogate it. And I tell you, most cases, when you ask the woman, did he never say what he has? No, it did, but I never interrogated him to say, what do you actually mean? Because he will tell you, those things. So interrogate, find out, and then you take a step back and say, if not, then don't go in.
Whoa. Yeah. There's just so much that we need to cover, but the time is not on our side. I want to take this question from Anonymous. What advice can you offer in terms of making decisions to stay in the relationship or marriage after infidelity and finding the sweet spot to work things out? I think this is a very difficult one. What do we do? Infidelity.
Because I think she's probably dealt with a number of cases. Because it is difficult. Shame. I read that comment and I just thought, you know what? This cat must pele. And I don't want to offer advice, Shame, from a place of ignorance. I think, let the professionals deal with this one.
Mommy.
Yeah, no. So we're going back to knowing your break, your deal breakers. So you need to have your own deal breakers as an individual, because when you go to bed with that man alone, and nobody, whether a professional or whatever, would not really prepare you for that. You need to know really why is that? So you need to go through the actual infidelity in depth. Is it because I saw it happen? Is it because I heard it happen? What is it about it that I have to deal with? Sometimes people have to deal with the visual where they have the pictures, and that you cannot take away. You know, we cannot remove that. So how then do I deal with it? Do we communicate constantly to say, Guti, you look, this is what made me do this, and so therefore that is why I'm not going to do this. And it has to be valid points to say, I went out of the way because this is what happened. And it shouldn't come from a blame, and it shouldn't come from judgmental. We both need to listen to where we are, how we got there, and then how do we get ourselves out. The possibility is you will never go back to where you were. You need to build afresh and start something that will work for you.
Whoa. Yeah, that was a mouthful. I think there's something I've also observed in just closing and in responding to this comment is I've seen and I've heard of couples where, but unfortunately in most of them, it's the husband who has cheated, if you can use that word, who has cheated, and they were able to get back or build anew after the infidelity, but it does take time. It does take a lot of commitment from the one who went astray to just show that they are still in this, that they are intentional about making the marriage work. But as well, sometimes we get into cruise control mode, and then we lose focus. I mean both. And you find Uguto Munye fails then to communicate their needs and say, Emfetumina, I need this, I need this, I need this. And again, that rose situation versus the car. And then you end up in a guy who one day, and this lady wears a just your tie and everything. And there he goes. He's gone down that path. And I think it's once you are there, I think it's an individual choice. Do you want to stay and make things work, but focus on not going back? Focus on building from where you are and then going forward, as well as try not to dwell too much on what has happened. Find out what caused you to get to that point and be honest about it. That's the most important and unfortunately the most difficult thing to do, to be honest and say, as in, I was tempted or I was just me ignorant and whatever, or I was just naughty and I went astray. And be open to being cross-questioned. And I think most people would want those details just for themselves. I don't know, women tend to want, how many times did you enjoy it? Do you love her? You know, all of those details.
I was gonna say, don't ask too many the questions that are also gonna kill you at the end. Sometimes we tend to want to ask questions, and those are the very same answers that will never make you go forth. Because what if he tells you are 10 times better than you? Then how do you get over that? Yeah. It's very true. I wish we could have a part 2 of this conversation, but the both of you have just been fantastic. Yo, like I could just have the 2 of you again, and we do have your contacts, and we'll knock on your door. Will you answer?
So far, the invoice.
Yes. Most definitely with an invoice. Yeah.
We'll zero the invoice. Yeah, because
please, let's normalize seeking professional help too. Abantu abaphume kumakuba oba anonymous kuma social media. Anonza, my marriage is this, my husband did this. Let's move away from that. Let's seek professional help if we want these things to be resolved. Because otherwise, wonke umuntu uzokunikeza all kinds of advice of what worked for them. Sometimes we'll give you something that actually didn't work, and some will just laugh at you, and some will say get out instead of saying you work on it. So professional help is very important, guys. Let's normalize seeking help. It just doesn't make you. It doesn't mean you failed.
And just to add on that as well, help does not necessarily mean, especially for abazalwane, go to umfundi. Sometimes umfundis is not equipped to deal with the issues that you're going through, and you need a professional's help. So yes, we've kind of been taught in the church, you would say, go to the spiritual father, that's all well and good, but as Umam Tony has just said, seek professional help. Tola usizo from the people that actually trained to deal with these things and bazokusiza.
Yeah.
And don't wait for the problems. Don't go when there's problems. Sometimes go to find out into are we still spicy enough, and what more can we do? That's what marital counseling is all about. Nje, just preventing is better than trying to cure something as a level. Let's just go for fun, to go check are we still in sync. Sometimes you think it's understand and
yeah, that's so very true. I can see, Gucci, this conversation is going to go on and on. Let me end the live. Thank you, moms and dads, for tuning in. Your comments were welcome. Hope we've answered the questions. Tune in tomorrow as we close SA Marriage Week 2021. We'll be back with a bang. Next year, Umam Tolintla will be there. Udede Ronald Moringai will be there, and so many others. Goodbye.